Thank you for listening to this podcast from TRE, Talk Radio Europe, your voice in Spain and around the world. For more information, please visit tre.radio.
Ger Sweeney presents Live on Eire in association with emeraldconnection.net.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney. And a very good evening and welcome to another edition of Live on Eire, the Irish programme. Thank you very much, Howard. Good to hear you as always. I look forward to hearing from you again tomorrow between 6 and 7 for another edition of Spain Today. Have yourself a pleasant evening, although by the looks of it, you and Luna won't be budging for the evening. And I think we should start the programme by saying that while I'm in Ireland at the moment and very conscious of what's going on weather-wise across parts of Spain, and a little earlier on today myself and George managed to have a little chat, and we referred to it in that on our G2. You'll hear that in the second hour of the programme. But just to say to people that I hope that you are safe, I hope that you are warm and well, and I hope that your life hasn't been impacted by the terrible happenings, and also to say to you that the people in Ireland are very much with you, because it is the lead story on news agencies across Ireland this evening. Spain declaring 3 days of mourning after the floods, and I do know that when George and I were talking a little earlier, I referred to the fact that there were over 50 people had lost their lives. Well, that figure has been amended since then to 72 is the latest that I have here in front of me. So just to say to you that while I am on the west coast of Ireland and the weather untypically is not as bad as it is in Spain, in fact, it's quite mild at the moment and has been for the last couple of days, and it has been dry as well, but cloudy. But certainly we're thinking of you, and our thoughts and go out to you and anybody that may be affected by that. So you know that George is on the programme in the second hour of the programme, and the idea in that is that we talk about the stories that have been making people chat. Not necessarily the biggest stories on the news, but stories that we're talking about, whether it is in the pub or when we meet on the street or driving to work or things like that. So George and myself with the G2 in the second hour. But in this hour of the programme, we're going to be meeting James Lawless. Now, James is no stranger to the programme, because he has already written a number of books, but he's got a new book, and I think this is his fourth book, which is based in Spain. It's called Helios, and I thought it was to do with something Greek when I first saw the title of it, but no. So James is going to be joining me. I believe he's just returned from Spain and is in Kildare at the moment, so looking forward to that conversation in this hour. So that's what you have this evening on Live on Eire. As always, if you'd like to get in contact with me, you know how to do that. You can send a WhatsApp message to +34 645 99 67 95, or you can send an email to studio@tre.radio. Now, President Michael D. Higgins has officially pardoned two men convicted of murder more than 140 years ago. President Higgins officially signed Sylvester Puff and James Barrett's pardons for the murder of Thomas Brown in County Kerry in 1882, saying that it was time to set the record straight. At a ceremony at Oras an Uachtaráin, that is the home of the president, attended by descendants of the two men, he said that while we cannot undo what happened, we do have the power to acknowledge that what happened to Sylvester Puff and James Barrett was a great wrong. He said, I am pleased to be able to formally grant a presidential pardon to each of the two men today, and to at least set the record straight. Sylvester Puff was 35 and his cousin, 21-year-old James Barrett, were hanged at Tralee Jail in January of 1883. Having been found guilty of the murder of Thomas Brown on his farm in Dromulton 3 months prior. However, last April, the Department of Justice recommended that Puff and Barrett receive a posthumous presidential pardon after an expert review of the case found that those convictions were unsafe. Puff's great-grandsons, 89-year-old Tomo Burke and his cousin Mike Sugru, aged in his 70s, have long been seeking justice for their ancestor. I mentioned that story, actually, wasn't it? It must have been back in April, because I do remember talking about this on the radio at the time. On the 3rd of October 1882, Thomas Brown was murdered while he was working in one of his fields in Dromulton near Scartha Glen. Two men dressed in dark coats were seen by a neighbour entering the field before Brown was shot several times. Poff and Barrett did not match the descriptions of the assailants. However, they were known to be in the vicinity at the time of the murder and were arrested following a statement by the neighbour. UCD, University College Dublin legal expert Dr. Niamh Howlin, was asked to carry out a review of the case by the Department of Justice, and she said that she came to find the convictions unsafe as they were inconsistent with the standards of the 1880s. She agreed that a modern-day court would not convict based on the evidence presented back in 1882. Poff and Barrett were tried twice before special juries in County Cork over the murder after the jury in the first trial failed to reach a verdict. They were convinced of murder following a second trial, and despite pleas of mercy to the Lord Lieutenant, they were executed. However, research into the case began when a local historian from Castle Island in County Kerry, Michael O'Donoghue, discovered the story of Poff and Barrett while in Tralee Library. Mr. O'Donoghue died, unfortunately, in 2008, and his papers were placed in storage until 2014 when Johnny Roach and Janet Murphy of the Castle Island District Heritage Group took on his work, developed the research and realised a pardon was a real possibility. Posthumous presidential pardons are an extremely rare occurrence in the history of the state. Since the state's foundation, this is only the fourth occasion where a historical conviction has been overturned. You know, I've spoken a few times on the programme to members of various groups that work on heritage and culture in the areas, and they do magnificent work. And when you consider what Johnny Roach and Janet Murphy from the Castle Island District Heritage Group did in this case, it proves, you know, the wealth of talent that is there in local areas that have an interest in history and have an interest in setting the record straight. So well done to everybody concerned. And posthumous presidential pardon for Sylvester Poff and James Barrett. Unfortunately, the two people that were actually responsible for the death of James Brown, now long since deceased, but unfortunate that they weren't brought to justice. Now, the number of deportation orders signed up to Sunday last was 1,792, which is an increase of 140% on the same period in 2023. That's according to figures Minister for Justice Helen McEntee brought to the Cabinet this week. In the same period, there have been 98 enforced deportations, which is an increase of 165% compared to this time last year. Ms McEntee told colleagues that the number of voluntary returns has also increased significantly. Voluntary return numbers are up on last year, with 648 recorded so far this year in comparison to 175 in the same period in 2023. Gardaí have arrested 138 people this year for arriving without appropriate documentation, and a significant number have been convicted. The process to secure charter flights, which will significantly increase capacity to conduct more enforced deportations, is set to conclude this year. In addition, the move to free up to 100 Gardaí for other immigration enforcement work, including deportations, will be fully up and running in the first 3 months of next year. Ms McEntee also provided a report to the government this week on measures introduced to speed up processing times for those seeking international protection. Accelerated international protection processing was introduced by Ms McEntee in November of 2022. The minister told the Cabinet that it has resulted in significant reductions in applications from the countries in question. Since then, accelerated processing now applies to 3 types of applicants. The first are those from safe countries of origin. The safe country list has been expanded since its introduction and is regularly reviewed. There are currently 15 safe countries of origin. The second area focuses on applicants who have received protection elsewhere in Europe. The third group are citizens of the 2 countries which provide the highest number of applicants in the previous quarter. This is currently Nigeria and Jordan. This measure was introduced in April of this year for the top country, Nigeria, and then extended to citizens from the second highest country of application, Jordan, on the 29th of July. Engagement between the Department of Justice, the UK Home Office, Gardaí and the Police Service of Northern Ireland around protecting the common travel area from abuses is also ongoing. Miss McEntee told the government that immigration investigations and enforcement action are also undertaken on a daily basis by the Garda National Immigration Bureau, who work closely with their counterparts in the UK Border Force and Immigration Enforcement in joint operations to detect and tackle abuses of the common travel area. So there we go. I suppose as we have had confirmation in the last 10 days or so that there is going to be an election this year, we're going to hear more and more, in inverted commas, good news coming from the government's press office, I would imagine, over the next wee while. It was a holiday weekend across Ireland, so we had a long weekend, which was great. Of course, that's always a difficult time for deaths on the roads. And the Gardaí, the roads unit of the Gardaí mounted a big campaign, as they always do on a long weekend. And a motorist travelling at 167 kilometres per hour in an 80 kilometre zone, more than double the speed limit, was among more than 1,200 detected speeding over the bank holiday weekend. Over the course of the weekend, 3 people were killed on Irish roads, bringing the total to 147 this year. Since a Garda road safety operation began last Thursday at 7 a.m, over 1,200 motorists were detected travelling in excess of the speed limit. Among those was a driver going 167 kilometres in an 80 zone in County Meath. In addition, one was caught travelling at 157 kilometres per hour in a 100 kilometre per hour zone at Quigley's Point, Donegal. Another was found travelling at 88 kilometres per hour in a 50 kilometre zone on Newcastle Road in Galway. I mean, that's a built-up area. Gardaí have said that motorists driving at such speeds are making deliberate and conscious decisions to do so, and are putting their lives and the lives of their passengers and other road users in danger. Over the course of the Garda operation, 158 drivers were arrested on suspicion of driving while intoxicated. In a statement, Gardaí said that this is unacceptable behaviour and should be called out by every responsible and law-abiding person. They highlighted that on Sunday, on the M8 in Cork, a learner driver in his 20s with no insurance was found driving at 170 kilometres per hour in a 120 kilometre zone. After testing positive for drugs on the roadside, he was arrested and charged with dangerous driving. With colder, wetter and darker evenings ahead, Gardaí have appealed for all road users to slow down and not just drive at the posted speed limit. There we go. What do they say? It's the limit and not a target. Is that what they say? It's something like that anyway. But there you have it. Yes, a number of people over the weekend losing their lives, which means that there are dozens upon dozens of people in mourning tonight. And it's something I suppose we should all bear in mind when we sit behind the wheel, no matter what time of the year it is, whether it's a long weekend or whether it's something else. Aye. Anyway, we started talking about County Kerry. Let's hear from a man originally from Kerry. Here's Christy Hennessy.
I've never seen a hamster dance. I've never met the Queen of Siam. I've never seen elephants hide. I've never watched a crocodile cry. You might say I've never lived at all. I wasn't there to see Niagara fall. I never knew that bishops lied. I never saw Hitler fight. I was out of town when Kennedy died. And slept right through the leap for mankind. You might say I've never lived at all. I wasn't there to see Niagara fall. All around the world, there's lots of pretty girls. They say there's one for everyone. Well, I'm looking for the one always use a plane to fly. I'm in England every 4th of July, and happy birthdays make me cry. You might say I never lived at all. I wonder what you see in me at all. All around the world, there's lots of pretty girls. They say there's one for everyone. Well, I'm looking for the one who's looking for me.
That's lovely. It comes from Christy Hennessy, unfortunately no longer with us. Asbestosis is what that poor man died of. He was working, as so many Irish people were, on the buildings in London back in the late 1950s, early 1960s, into the 70s probably. And that's what got him, I'm afraid, at the end. And I had met Christy on a number of occasions and was planning a Christmas event in Ennis, a live performance, and contacted Christy to know would he be available. And I didn't manage to get to talk to Christy, didn't realise it at the time, but he was in hospital. And I was rather taken aback when I couldn't get him for that date, and couldn't get to talk to him because he was always so available. And but anyway, turns out that he was in hospital and very unwell, and I'd say about 2 or 3 nights before that performance should have taken place, the death was announced. His death was announced. So it was early December, and after the Christmas show I was putting together. But yeah, what a wonderful performer, Christy Hennessy. Aye. Wonderful. And you've heard his daughter on the programme singing down through the years as well. That little spark that you heard at the back, that was the fire. I have the door open because I'm home alone, and I have the doors open and the fire is blazing inside in the living room. But I'm out here in the studio and I'm happy out, very content. I'm going to do a very quick break now, and after that I'm going to be talking to my first guest on the programme this evening. That's Liam. Sorry, it's not Liam. It's James Lawless. I don't know where I got Liam from, but anyway, so James Lawless joining me just after these.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
Now, a man that has been on Live on Eire almost as much as I have is a man by the name of James Lawless, who has written a number of books and has discussed them with me on the programme. He joins us this evening live from Kildare. It's lovely to talk to you, James. How are you?
Not too bad at all, Ger. Nice to talk to you.
And welcome back, and good to have you on the programme. You haven't been resting on your laurels, as they say, because you have a new tome on release.
That's right. A new book called Helios, which is the sun god, which is the thing that really appeals to me about Spain, you know, contrast to Ireland. I
was going to ask you about that, because when I saw the title, first thing that popped into my head was, he's moved from Spain to Greece. He's setting this in. And then when I read on, I realised that you hadn't moved your scripts from Spain to Greece, but you were using it, the whole sun kind of a thing. So anyway, how long was this in the pot for before it hit the pages?
How long was I at it? Is that what you said? Sure. About 2.5 years, I suppose. It's a theme that preoccupied me a lot, because I spent, as you probably know, a lot of time teaching. I actually taught in a Christian Brothers school, and there were some fine men there, and there's a lot of bad publicity for the brothers, I think. And I began to think of some of the good men. I was particularly, there was a brother I remember, he used to bring us in on a Saturday morning voluntarily to teach us the rudiments of Spanish. And that got me really interested in Spanish, and I later did a degree in it. So I'm very thankful to that particular brother. And there are other good men as well. So what really was prompting me, Ger, with the novel was the idea that with all this lambasting of the religious in the media, I said, what about the other side of the coin? What about a good man?
The good guys that were there, yeah.
He tried his best. And so I set about writing about this guy called Paul Guilfoyle, who had become a bit disillusioned with the order. He was aging and in ill health, and he felt he had missed out on life. And he also had a great desire to be an artist. And that was proscribed. It was considered like, false icons in the religious context. So he was proscribed really in the context of the Brotherhood. And he left the Brotherhood, and decided to go to Spain to see can he pursue his love of art, and also to have maybe a last fling at life, because he had followed the celibate rule all his life. And so this was, a thing that he felt maybe a bit inadequate about. And when he went to Spain...
Before we get into the nitty gritty of the story itself, let's just drill down a little bit if we can, because as you said, you worked for a time in a Christian Brothers school. I was taught by the Christian Brothers, and like yourself, I met some terrific fellas. I met some really genuinely good, decent, helpful, caring brothers, and unfortunately, they were tarred with the same bad brush that the bad boys were. I met some bad boys as well, don't make any mistake about it. But you would have been working with the brothers as opposed to me being a child and being taught, or a teenager and being taught by them. In your experience, how many of them would have been happy in life, happy with the decisions that they made?
Well, that's a difficult one for me as a layman to answer, but there were some men who I think were happy in the sense they were very dedicated teachers. And but there was always this limitation. I remember once there was a Spanish teacher, a brother, and there was a Spanish play on in the Abbey. And I remember saying, wouldn't it be great to go and see that? And he had to ask for permission to go to the theatre, because the theatre was frowned upon in his order. So, and that sort of contradicted to me, because he was a teacher of Spanish and he was going to see a Spanish play, and he wasn't allowed, to see it. And like this would have imparted, a lot of stuff into his own teaching. In other words, his teaching was being limited, in my opinion, because he wasn't able to appreciate the art. So that, I think there were very terrible limitations. Like they had to ask permission, for example, from the superior for pocket money, this sort of thing. I remember going out when I was going, say, to a function with them. So, but your question as regards how many were really happy. I know some people, some of them entered at a very young age, maybe 12 or 14, and they really didn't know what they were doing, I suppose. And maybe some of them perhaps felt, as they got middle-aged or a bit older, that they felt a bit disillusioned, perhaps, But that is, I cannot speak for all of them, but that was the case with some of them,
Okay. So, the hero, in inverted commas, in this is Paul Guilfoyle. And how do you build up the character? How do you kind of allow the reader to sympathise with the decisions he has to and ultimately makes?
Yeah, well, Paul Guilfoyle gets a letter from the Mater Hospital, about his prostate, and he refuses to open it because he has a foreboding.
Okay. And
he leaves that letter open on his kitchen table and heads off for Spain. But he knows he's going to have to return to it, and he does return to it at the end, of course. But he says he doesn't want to think of that. He wants to feel that he can live a little bit of his life that he felt, as I say, proscribed or incarcerated, if you like, inside a monastery, and he now wants to break free and find out what life is all about. And he had been particularly influenced by a very, very kind brother in the novel called Brother Marias, who had a very tragic end. But he introduced him to art. It was mainly religious paintings, of course. he used to buy them in Green's Bookshop and other shops in Dublin, and he was the purveyor for the library, the school library. And so he was very influential on Paul. And Paul began to draw, and he got into a bit of trouble because he did a few cartoons of a few of them, and he was given out to quite a bit. So he set off for Spain then, knowing his mortality was, drawing close, and he arrives in Spain and is absolutely blown away when he sees this beautiful lady swimming, and he becomes absolutely infatuated with her, and he begins to think the whole idea of biology, desire, celibacy, everything comes rushing back into his head, and this sets him really sort of reflecting on his whole life. And an interesting thing happens. You probably know yourself about the forest fires that are frequent in Spain, and there was this Viviana de Alonso is a swimmer, and she is a sort of a disillusioned actress, and she has a daughter called Maribel. And Maribel has a little dalliance with a young boy, and they go off into the forest, and of course the fires come along. And one thing about Paul was a very strong guy, had very strong hands. He used to do all the lifting in the monastery, and when he heard about the daughter going to the forest and the fires striking, he went and he saved the daughter.
Okay.
And he was wondering what actually propelled him to do that. And he knows deep down what propelled him was his desire for the mother, for the lady. So that's what propelled him, Yeah.
It goes to show that you can spend many years or decades in a monastery, but you're still a man at the heart of it all, isn't that right?
That's exactly the point, yeah.
She turns out to be, and we won't give too much away because it's nice for the reader to be able to explore this, but this Aviana turns out to be a fairly unusual character and a little bit volatile as well.
Absolutely. I don't think Paul, who comes out really as an innocent, particularly sexually, from the cloister, and she senses that in him, and she manipulates him, withdrawing favors and giving favors, but all the time holding him on tenterhooks because she wants something from him. And part of that is in connection with her husband that she wants to get rid of. Okay. And I don't want to give too much away, but she keeps working on Paul in the hope that she will get him as an accomplice.
Okay.
Yeah.
And in any good love story, there's a twist, and there's also. Actually, would you call this a love story? Would you?
I suppose I'd call it a biological story more than anything else.
Right.
It's a story of infatuation, perhaps, because he becomes infatuated. He begins to see the lack of virtues in the lady, but yet he can't do anything about it because he's hopelessly drawn and hopelessly infatuated. So it's really a book about infatuation, I suppose I'd say.
And as I was just about to say, there are twists along the way, and while he is infatuated with her and she is not enamored with her husband, who is a very powerful man, there is somebody else on the scene that she would be kind of interested in, and we won't say much more than that.
Yes, that's Fudoli, the Italian producer, and she pretends sometimes when Paul catches her on the phone that she was talking to her husband, but in fact he heard the Italian words and he knew it wasn't her husband, so he knows that she's having some sort of a dalliance with this producer who was promising her all sorts of parts in films, because she basically feels that her husband prevented her from developing as an actress, that he wanted her just stay at home, be a good wife and all this sort of thing. And so she feels quite a resentment towards the husband. And that's part of the conflict in the story.
Okay. We won't get in, as I said, to the nitty gritty of it, but it doesn't go to plan for her. Does it go to plan in any shape or form for Paul?
It goes to plan in the sense that Paul discovers that this thing he never really knew about, which was desire, wasn't really all it was made out to be in the end. That's one thing.
Right.
And as regards Viviana, she becomes disillusioned as well because she is let down. She was a local girl, you see, from the local village.
Yes.
And when the girl, her daughter, Maribel, had a dalliance with the young boy. The young boy was called Angelo. And Angelo was a fisherman's son. And he died in the fire. And the locals are blaming this jumped up actress who came from the local village for the death of the boy. And they're feeling very resentful towards her. And I don't know, can I say what they did to her?
No, let's leave that there for the readers.
Yeah, but what they did to her has a profound effect and leads to a very, terrible disaster at the end.
The characters in this, are they characters that are created from bits and pieces of people that you know or stories you've heard?
Well, I suppose the obvious answer for any writer is they're composites, of all sorts of people. But ultimately, they just could carry away with their own lives, and you find yourself being just drawn to them, and they take on their own individual shapes, So the answer is basically that they are totally fictional, yeah.
No more than what we discussed a few minutes ago, you saying that, there are very good men in the church, as there are women. That would be my experience as well, in fairness. But for people that mightn't have come across nice Christian brothers because they weren't exposed to them, they weren't, in school maybe with them or being taught by them, and they might have a not so nice opinion of them. Do you think this would change their minds, having read about Paul?
I think it would help. I'd like to feel that it would help because, there's so much negativity towards so many of these people in the media that you very, very, very rarely hear anything positive about these men. And it must be terribly difficult for just men to continue when they turn on the radio every day and they hear more and more abuse. And there is no doubt there was some terrible abuses. But I just feel sort of a sympathy for the people who were not pedophiles or predators,
Yeah, or there were teachers there that used corporal punishment way too much. When I say teachers, I mean brothers, nuns, lay people. So for those that weren't like that, it's nice that there is a positive light being shone on them.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
All right. Fingers crossed on this one then. How long has this been released?
It was released this month only, Ger.
Oh, great.
It was published in Tennessee, in America.
Really?
Yes, and it's interesting that I would not on purpose, but it seems that I'm following a Spanish trail really with my writing because my very first novel, as you probably know, Peeling Oranges, was about a what would you call it, a paternal quest, and it was set in Franco, Spain. And then I had the novel Finding Penelope, which was about a writer trying to run away from a dysfunctional family in Dublin and to set up in Spain. And then a third novel was called The Spanish Au Pair, which was about an Irish Spanish au pair living in Dublin. Was the other side of the coin, if you like, how she managed and how she fared in Dublin. So this actually would be my fourth book, which is with a theme, a Spanish theme in it,
Lovely. All righty.
Yeah.
What else are you working on? Are you working on, if you're telling me this was 2.5 years in the making, you're obviously planning and plotting something else, are you?
Well, I'm just trying to get a collection of short stories together, which were published in various magazines. I was thinking I'd try and put them together. And I have a novel which I had published sometime in the past called American Doll, which was based on the 9/11 tragedy and the Irish connection to it. And I'm sort of working on a new edition of that as well.
Lovely. All right. There's something about the short story that is very, very appealing, isn't there?
There is. It's a very difficult art. I rather take on the novel, believe it or not,
really?
than the story. Yeah, because whatever way my mind works, I love long, detailed works, trying to get things sorted out. And sometimes the short story is maybe too short. Like someone called it a fleeting glimpse, and perhaps that's true. But But there are some wonderful. I'm actually reading Edna O'Brien's latest collection, the late Edna O'Brien, whom I admired very much. I'm just reading her latest collection there before our last collection before she died. And if you want to read good short stories, I think you couldn't pick a better lady.
Yeah, I was in my mum's house recently and I found a book that my dad had, a collection of short stories from John B. Keane, which I'm just about to get stuck into as well. So
Yes.
some of them I'd know already, but many of them I wouldn't. So I'm looking forward to
Yes.
getting stuck into that. And so I'll be putting yours on the list when it's ready as well. Listen, I know that's available online and in good bookstores, but we are going to put that, or we have that already on our website as well in our virtual bookstore, so anybody that wants it can get their hands on it.
That's terrific, Ger. I just say Amazon Spain, Amazon ES.
Yeah.
It's very, very prompt. Somebody was telling me they got it from Amazon ES and they were quicker than any of the others.
There you go. Well, if they log on to ours, they'll be able to get it just as quick, we promise. How's that?
Yes.
All right, listen, the book is called Helios. Nothing to do with Greek. It's all to do with the sun and the sunshine in Spain and the story of the former Christian brother by the name of Paul Guilfoyle. Is there a definite ending, happy or sad? You needn't say what it is for Paul in the book.
Oh, there is definitely an ending. Yes, definitely.
Okay. All righty. Well, hopefully we won't need the hankies for that one.
Yes.
Listen, as always, James, it's lovely to talk to you, and thank you for letting me know about Helios. I'm very much looking forward to getting tucked into it, even though I know the story. You've given me the synopsis of it, but yet I'm looking forward to the nitty-gritty of it and getting stuck into that as soon as it arrives in the hall. So look, James Lawless, as always, thanks a million for talking to us.
Thank you, Ger.
This is not a love song. I'm just checking that your light's still on. I just wanna feel like I belong, but I don't know where I am. I've not quite broken everything I've loved. That's why I hold you in museum gloves. And you can ask me anything you like, but just don't ask me why I'm like this. This is a love song after all. I think I might have lied before, I don't recall. And they say that pride, it comes before the fall. And so does silence, dear. Least enough to tell you so, but I don't have the strength to watch you go.
It's called All. It comes from Snow Patrol. There you go. Yes, indeed. I'm very fortunate, and so is James Lawless, that Arsenal isn't playing until later. Why is that? Well, because I'm a complete clown, and I had forgotten to let Julie know that why do I keep calling him Liam? That James was going to be joining me on the programme this evening, and it was only as I was talking to him and said, it's on the bookstore, I realised I hadn't told Julie or asked her if she could make sure that the details were put there. So I text her immediately, and lo and behold, it's done already. Julie, you're a star. Thanks ever so much, and enjoy the Arsenal game. I don't know who they're playing. I don't even know what they're playing. Whatever they're playing and whoever they're playing against, I hope they beat them out 5-0. Right? Just because you're so decent. Thank you to James for talking to me about Helios, and that is now available on our bookstore. And apologies again to Julie for that late request. So there you have it. Right, I'm going to do a quick break, and after that, before I do that, because I will forget, because I'm such a clown, I will absolutely forget to tell you that Healy's Irish Bar and Restaurant, which can be found in Estepona, at Puerto Deportivo, to be precise, in Estepona. They are having a Halloween fancy dress party tomorrow night. Woohoo! Yeah. And it's going to be mighty crack, apparently, because it usually is when it's Healy's Irish Bar and Restaurant. So if you'd like to go along, well then, you're more than welcome. They'd be delighted. And there are prizes for the best dressed woman and the best dressed man. So, there you go. The poor skeleton can't go because he's nobody to go with. That's an old school joke, Ger. I know I am, but sure I couldn't resist. So if you're going along, tell him Ger Sweeney said hello, won't you? Please. Thanks very much for that. Right, and good luck and have a mighty night there. Let's do a quick break and I'll be back in just a moment.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
It's nice to have your company, and thank you for joining me this evening on the programme. Yes, there will be talk about the election in the second part of the programme when George Lee joins me for the G2, but the state body tasked with overseeing, how long are we, 11 minutes, okay, tasked with overseeing the electoral register is expected to publish a report on the accuracy of the list of voters after the general election. On Comisiún Táchán, the Independent Electoral Commission has begun to assess the register, which is operated by local authorities, for completeness and quality. The Commission has a concern that in many cases voters who may have moved from one constituency to another may not have been removed from the first local authority area where they lived and may appear on more than one register. Last month, the organisation's chief executive, Art O'Leary, told the Oireachtas Committee on Local Government that, he told the Committee on Local Government that the state of the electoral registers has been a long-standing issue of some concern for TDs and senators. He said, our function is to oversee the electoral register, and we have engaged directly with every local authority, through what has been a particularly busy and challenging year. Being clear, we are finding that there are wide variances between the resourcing of local authorities' franchise functions and also the performance of those functions. At the moment, there is no single central register of voters, but multiple registers which are managed by each individual local authority. The issue which has been encountered by the Commission is that a single voter can appear on multiple registers. There has been no evidence of widespread abuse of the system, but out-of-date lists of voters can lead to turnout figures being skewed because it appears that individuals did not turn up to vote when they voted in other constituencies. Another constituency, because you can't vote in more than one. Well, you shouldn't anyway. In the past, local authorities were under pressure to add voters when people moved to a new constituency. However, the local authorities did not always go through all the necessary steps to remove the voters from their previous constituency. So there you have it. I checked mine actually last year because, in fact, I wasn't registered for this particular house that I'm living in. And I'm here many years, but I knew that. So I used to always go to the house that I was in previously and collect my polling card when I knew they'd been delivered. And I would always say, I'm sorry about that, I'll get it sorted before the next election. But I finally did it last year, and it was grand. But I was only on it once. I just moved from one to the other in the same constituency, obviously. Speaking of the election, an organisation called See Her Elected, and we spoke to the chief executive of the this particular group about a year ago, I'd say it was. An initiative which is aimed at getting more women from rural Ireland into politics. The organisation has said that the impending general election is a golden opportunity to increase female participation in local councils. New research and analysis of recent local election results carried out by See Her Elected found a significant electoral advantage for sitting councillors regardless of gender. Well, that would mean then that there is a distinct advantage for more male councillors than female, wouldn't it? It would, yeah. Its analysis found that in the 2024 local elections, 85% of sitting candidates were re-elected, securing 72% of council seats. Now, this success rate was consistent across genders, with 86% of female incumbents and 88% of male incumbents being re-elected. This suggests that voters prioritise incumbency over gender when making their choices. I would agree with that. The research found that 68% of co-opted councillors who ran were successfully elected, significantly outperforming new candidates with a 19% success rate. See Her Elected said that these findings highlight that even a shorter period in office can provide a substantial electoral boost. Co-option is where a vacancy arises at local government level and is filled locally. It can happen for a number of reasons, including resignation. At Dáil level, where a vacancy occurs, there would have to be a by-election. The paper highlights that while co-opted councillors lack the experience of a traditional election campaign, they still benefit from increased name recognition and positive associations with their role. That's according to Dr. Michelle Maher, the lady that we had on the programme, See Her Elected's programme manager, who undertook the recent research paper. The advantage of incumbency stems from several factors, including name recognition, established networks, and track record of community engagement, she said. See Her Elected said that while being a sitting councillor benefits both men and women equally, it does, however, present a challenge for increasing female representation, given the pre-existing gender imbalance at local government level. Dr. Maher pointed to a number of examples where female candidates are met with a wall of men getting re-elected over successive local election cycles. She highlighted the fact that the same male sitting councillors had been re-elected in Castleisland, County Kerry, Borris-in-Ossory, County Laois and Killaloe, County Clare over a number of election cycles. The overrepresentation of men in incumbent positions means that the majority of seats won by incumbents continue to go to men, she said. See Her Elected said the upcoming general and Shannon elections offer a golden opportunity to improve gender balance. Political parties talk a good talk about supporting women in politics, but now is the time to walk the walk. The co-option process is a real and immediate opportunity to demonstrate commitment to gender equality in local government, said Dr. Maher. She is absolutely right and bang on the nail. Aye, fair play to her. And an interesting study, isn't it, to take all right and look at it. And I hadn't thought about co-option, and because I am very much aware that there is going to be a large number of councillors who were elected either on the last council elections, which was only back in May or June of this year, or maybe previously, who are running for a Dáil seat for their party or as an independent, and that is going to open up a huge number of opportunities at local government level. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out over the next 6 months or thereabouts. I think it's time for a bit of music. Yep. Here's a man we've had on the programme before. Always a joy to talk to Ultan Conlon as the light goes out, or goes low, as the light goes low. Here he is for you. We've got news on the way as well.
You must take me for some kind of fool who never cries. Don't hold me against my will. If it doesn't feel right, if it doesn't feel right, birds won't sing. If it doesn't feel right, you can't sit back and do nothing. Seems my heart's desire is to overflow. I look to the north and south. I still don't know because it doesn't feel right. Nothing's coming on time. No, it doesn't feel right. I've got nobody to call mine. It's an awful long way to go. Going over and back, shuffling to and fro. Let your sorrow out through the window as the light gets low, as the light gets low. You must take me for some kind of fool who never lied. As I count all the coppers I find, I realize that something's not right. Somebody jumped the line. Something's not right, but it can't be all of the time. It's an awful long way to go. Going over and back, shuffling to and fro. Let your sorrow out through the window as the light gets low, as the light gets low.
Nice. That's Ultan Conlon and a track that's called As the Light Gets Low. We have about a minute and a half to go now before we go to the news at the top of the hour. PJ Curtis, if you happen to be listening, I received an email from you. It probably was over the weekend. As you know, I've been travelling a lot. And when I'm not travelling, I'm trying to catch up with all the stuff I should be doing. But thank you, and I will be in touch with you over the information that you sent to me by email, and I hope all is well in your world. I'm hoping to get Mick Handley squeezed in the second hour of the programme as well. I have a nice track from him lined up, but I'm also hoping to get the Kilfenora Cayley Band and Dunstiff in, and I was thinking I might try and get Greenshine in as well. So I don't know. We'll see what happens anyway. George Lee will be joining me, as you know, for the G2. He and I spoke a little earlier on today, and you'll hear that conversation about some of the things that we're talking about in Ireland at the moment, exercising our minds, and you can guess what the biggest one of all of those happens to be at the minute. Very much so. So we'll see what happens. Look, as always, if you'd like to get in contact, you're more than welcome to do so. I'm here for another hour. You can send a WhatsApp message if you'd like to +34 645 99 67 95, or you can send an email to studio@tre.radio. I need another drink of water, I think. And I'll go for the news, and I'll be back just after that, and we'll see what happens in the second hour of the programme. We'll make as good a fish to it as we possibly can anyway. All right, so please, if you can, stay with me for the following hour.
Talk Radio Europe.
Your voice in Spain.
And you welcome to the second hour of the programme Wednesday evening, the Irish programme live on Eire. And I will start the second hour as I started the first hour by saying that I am very much aware that things are not okay in Spain, in certain parts of Spain. And we heard about it just there on the news. And for anybody listening that has any loved one involved or in that area, you might be worried. Well, our thoughts go with you this evening. And when I started the programme, I mentioned that George and I had mentioned it briefly in our G2, and you'll hear that. And at the time I mentioned that over 50 had died, and at the top of the programme I mentioned that that had all been changed because 72 people have been reported dead. But since then, and that's only an hour, I see that the RTE News website, I told you this is the main news in Ireland tonight, that Spain floods, the death toll has climbed to 95, according to the latest report on the RTE website this evening. So thoughts, definitely, the thoughts of the Irish people, certainly, with our Spanish families and colleagues and friends and anybody that might be caught up in that. So there you have it. All right. Minister for Public Expenditure, Paschal Donoghue, has added his voice to those opposed to further toll increases for motorists. You'd never imagine there was an election coming. Who me cynical not at all. Some toll rates for motorways in Dublin Port Tunnel will increase from next year. Transport Infrastructure Ireland, or TRE, confirmed last week. The toll charge changes will come into effect from the 1st of from January. I don't know what date. I would be very careful about further toll increases, Minister Donoghue said, citing the impact it would have on the cost of living. There are the same commuters who are seeing changes in carbon taxation, and they have also seen changes and increases in the price of petrol and diesel that are beyond our control, he said. Now, last week, Housing Minister Dara O'Brien said that the increases proposed for TII for motorways and the Dublin Port Tunnel were far too high. I forgot to take water while the news was on. Anyway, he appealed for those who were increasing the tolls to reflect on their proposed increases and not to proceed with them. Minister Donoghue, who is a former Minister for Transport, said the tolls are set independently of government, but anything that further adds to the cost of living at the moment is something I would be very reluctant to see happen, he added. Mr Donoghue was speaking after updating Cabinet on progress in the National Development Plan, saying the capital expenditure to the end of September was €8.1 billion. That's a lot of euros. A lot of euros. PJ Curtis is listening. Hiya, PJ. Good to have you along. Thanks very much for the text. Workers have been urged to check. This is Irish workers now, or Irish taxpayers have been urged to check whether they are due refunds after it emerged that hundreds of thousands of people have overpaid taxes on their wages in recent years. New figures reveal that 330,000 PAYE workers, that's pay-as-you-earn workers, overpaid their taxes last year, while 245,000 taxpayers were due money back from the revenue commissioners in 2022. This means that around a quarter of all PAYE taxpayers may have overpaid taxes last year and the year before that. Indications are that average refunds of around €735, could be due to taxpayers who overpaid their taxes in 2022 alone. Finance Minister Jack Chambers revealed in a Dáil reply to Labour finance spokesperson Jed Nash that provisional data provided to him by Revenue shows that thousands of workers are overpaying their tax every year. Mr Nash urged all PAYE workers to submit a tax return to make sure that they are getting their reliefs and credits that they are entitled to. The deadline for submitting a tax return is the 14th of November. Mr Chambers told the Labour TD that Revenue makes a preliminary end-of-year statement available to employees. This sets out a provisional tax position based on information available on Revenue records. It will show whether an employee has paid the correct amount of income tax and universal social charge for the year. Workers can claim tax relief for paying medical expenses. They can get e-worker relief if they work from home. They can claim a rental tax credit if they rent. And those on tracker and variable rate mortgages can claim a tax refund along with a string of other reliefs and credits. Mr. Chambers said that Revenue regularly issues letters to taxpayers who may have either overpaid or underpaid tax. These letters advise the recipients to submit an income tax return to claim any extra tax credits or reliefs that may be due and to declare any additional income that they may have received. Revenue has said that to date, 1.2 million PAYE taxpayers or taxpayer units filed an income tax return for 2022. That's a nice way of putting it, isn't it? Not PAYE taxpayer units. Okay. And 1.1 million PAYE taxpayer units have already filed for 2023. But another 1 million PAYE taxpayer units have yet to file an income tax return for 2022, with about 1.2 million yet to file for last year. Mr. Nash was told roughly 6 out of 10 PAYE taxpayers had a balanced tax position last year and the year before, but 155,000 taxpayer units in 2022 had potentially underpaid their taxes. Last year, 167,000 had potentially underpaid tax. The figures relate to PAYE taxpayers only, as data is not available for self-assessed taxpayers. There you go. I'd be one of those self-assessed taxpayers. But I'm up to date and I have a bill due now, all right, in the next week. 2 weeks, is it? 14th of November, I think they're taking out. But it is there. It is there sitting waiting for them. It is, aye, absolutely. It is nice to be able to say that too, isn't it? Very much so. I did say that I would try and get Mick Handley in. All right, let's do that. Here he is with the good ship Delirious.
I jumped out of my skin one day, athletic as a buck. Climbed aboard a golden boat and for God knows where I struck. I left my dear companions on the shore with mouths ajar, left them with 1,000 tears to ponder. My darling wife and family looked on in sad dismay, perplexing how such folly could steal their love away. But then there's no one blinder as he who will not see. I thought I was the master of the oceans. And the good ship Delirious was the bones of a shabby raft, flung together fiddlesticks, rickety fore and aft. But I rode like the devil with the strength of 40 men, gave no thought to currents, tide or compass. It's all aboard for paradise and the green hills far away. All aboard this thingamajig and damn the judgment day. Hand me down my fiddle, it's time for a sailor's tune. 'Tis hard to quell a vivid imagination. I sailed to Valparaiso, 'twas a word I learnt in school. Thought I'd search for treasure and allow my heels to cool. But sure all I found was worry and the chilly attitude, running from my devil's ghosts and demons. A raft might be a godsend to a rat or a drowning man, but now that it was sundering, it scarcely fit my plan. But I stood defiant on the deck, fiddled as she sank, like Nero when the towers of Rome were burning. I swung back to Jamaica, in need of smart repairs. The natives laughed at the good of it and never left their chairs. I cursed their disposition, put to sea once more, blinded by this thirst for redemption. It's all aboard for paradise and the green hills far away. All aboard this thingamajig and damn the judgment day. Hand me down my fiddle, it's time for a sailor's tune. Let Neptune now decide my destination. The dark clouds were gathering, the seas were mighty tall. They were pounding the delirious with the force of a wrecking ball. I don't remember drowning, but then I don't suppose you do. Good fortune took me back to dear old Eire. Washed up on the shore of lonely Bannistrand, crab claws in my pockets and a fiddle in my hand. I'm now recuperating on Mr. Egan's farm, where I'm the keeper of the honeybees and roses. It's all aboard for paradise and the green hills far away. All aboard this thingamajig and down the judgment day. Hand me down my fiddle, it's time for a sailor's tune. Hurrah, me boys for sun and recreation. I'll go no more a roving, I'll go no more to sea, but it's hard to quell a vivid imagination.
There you go, Mick Hanley. He's been a guest on the programme, and it's always good to be able to play Mick, a song called The Good Ship Delirious. Absolutely lovely. Right, so I told you that myself and George had a chat this afternoon, and I'm going to play that for you just after this quick commercial break. So it'll be the G2, and we certainly had fun. I hope you enjoy it just after these.
Live on Eire, presented by Ger Sweeney.
George Lee, as always, a joy to have you on the G2. You're very welcome. How are you?
I'm not doing too badly at all, Jerry. Thank you.
There's no
you?
Me, yeah, great, absolutely. There's no need for a big fanfare anymore introducing you, because I think you're on TRE more than I am these days.
Well, your listener certainly knows me, you know.
My listener. Maybe I'll be in after. Yes, indeed. George, anyway, good to talk to you. And the idea, for those that don't know, for those that haven't been put through this torture before, what myself and George do is we talk about things that we're talking about in Ireland. It mightn't necessarily be the biggest stories, but certainly the ones that are exercising our minds. But George, before we start, the last time we spoke, you and I, we did a pre-record on the morning of the programme, and it was the morning that people in Florida were bracing themselves for Storm Milton to hit land, and thankfully things didn't work out as badly as we thought it might be. So I think it's appropriate to start the programme, or start the G2 today, by saying that our thoughts very much with the people of Valencia and Andalusia and various areas across Spain where flash flooding has basically taken the lives of over 50 people at this stage. Horrendous.
It's absolutely horrendous, Jerry. It doesn't even bear thinking about. And I suppose, you know, we're the extremes of weather that we're witnessing all over the world, you know, give a lie, I suppose, to the doubters around
climate change.
And you know, certainly something that's coming, I think, an awful lot faster than people thought about. And I also noticed a report in the last couple of days saying that, you know, the whole Gulf Stream could redirect in the next couple of years as well. Wow. And that, you know, the north of Europe, including Ireland, you know, we could wind up in a deep freeze very quickly. And of course, everybody knows the temperate climates, particularly in Ireland, are maintained by the Gulf Stream, which goes up all the way from the Gulf of Mexico and around the tip of Florida and back up to northern climes, and that really is what keeps us temperate. But look, our thoughts today certainly have to be with the people of Spain, and you know, it doesn't bear thinking about. And I suppose for all of us that go to Spain, I suppose from Ireland, and who think in terms of Spain as being that warm place. And I suppose the other thing is that when we go there, we're in holiday mode. Yeah. You know, to now think that these people are living through this absolutely terrible thing is dreadful. So our thoughts and prayers go with them.
Well, fingers crossed that things will clear away very, very quickly. George, the biggest topic of conversation, this could almost be an election special, although I do think in my heart that we will have a number of election specials between now and the end of the year. But let's talk about our own election firstly, and we have been flagging this for months and months and months. There has been great excitement in the media about this as well, and it's almost like election weariness at this stage, and it hasn't even been called. But Simon Harris, our Taoiseach, saying that, look, at once the finance bill is done, I will move very quickly and I will call the election and we'll get it done, and we'll all be sitting down for Christmas dinner very shortly. Happy out.
Oh, that it was that easy, you know.
yeah. But I mean, they're canvassing like blazes, like, and on the road already, I'm seeing posters or billboards, not posters, but billboards for politicians. But I suppose, look, he's taken the guesswork out of it now. We are going to have an election, and chances are it will be the 29th of November, moved from what we thought might be the 22nd, but it's now looking most likely the 29th.
Yeah, and the strategy is more interesting than anything else, because at this stage you're seeing the government parties who still want to be in government, but they're trying to distance themselves
from each other. Yeah,
well, so that everybody knows the difference, you know. And it's very, very strange.
If you were listening to the same podcast as I was, and I think you were, the reason that was explained, that was brought up for that, was that they're trying to ditch the Greens, so they can't basically say, "Look, will you vote the government back in?" They want to shaft the Greens. And so they're looking for, potential. So they have to kind of go it alone. But again, that was raised, what was raised as well was the TV debates that might come when the election is called, because you're going to have three people on the podium. If they do all the leaders, let's say they do the leaders of the big parties, government parties and big parties. So you'll have, Micheál Martin from Fianna Fáil. You'll have Taoiseach Simon Harris Fine Gael. You will have Roderick O'Gorman from the Green Party, and you'll have Mary Lou McDonald from Sinn Féin, and she'll be fighting 3 against 1. Really, it's going to be fun if they do it that way.
Yeah, and that could actually work to her advantage, I suppose, because she'll be able to say, well, look, the three of you have been in bed together for the last whatever number of years. I'm the only real alternative standing. I mean, I could write the script for her at this point.
I don't think she'll be mentioning about going to bed with anybody, to be honest. Or anybody being in bed together, because that too could kind of write the script for other parties, couldn't it?
But look, and again, listening to that podcast as well, Ger, and we're talking about Path to Power.
That's it, yes, let's credit the lads, Ivan Yates and Matt Cooper.
Ivan Yates. Yeah, and a very good take, generally speaking, on the way things go. But in listening to that, I suppose, and look, I suppose Ivan Yates gives a very interesting insight into government, because he was in government for so long as minister himself, and then I was also in the private sector. But in looking at that, Ger, it's what I was picking up from it last weekend, and I thought it was quite interesting, was that the Fine Gael bounce is kind of there at the moment. It's going to be very interesting to see if we, at the end of this and going into the election, we're looking at it, that there's a good possibility that we could have just a two-party coalition at the end of this for the first time between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael. And that in itself would be quite interesting. But then on the other side, you have the parties of the left and the hodgepodge of independence that could arise out of it. I do think for once the government parties have got it right on the timing of the election. If they had gone earlier in the year, I would have said that there would have been a lot more hope for independence, and that there would be an awful lot more independent TDs in the Dáil after the next election. But now I think they have done enough, Ger. I think, looking back now as well, the whole Varadkar to Harris changeover probably happened at the right time. Look, that could have gone either way, I suppose, but when you look back and you see that it's been successful, you say, yeah, it was a genius move, but that genius move could also have been
a disaster.
The other thing is, I mean, you could not have picked a worse time for Sinn Féin to have imploded on itself coming up to it. I mean, they just have no time to recover from this. And I think it could get very dirty coming into an election as well. And the other thing is that, they should have got rid of this in the news cycle, but it's now 6 weeks on and we're still talking about it. We at this stage are probably 8 or 9 days away from the general election being called officially, and there just isn't time for them to recover, I don't think, at this point.
However, once they get on the hustings, and I suppose we saw this week, was it Monday morning, and I was amazed that Sinn Féin released its healthcare policy, or Tuesday morning, because Monday was a holiday here. But I was amazed that they did what they did in terms of their health issues, and it really was firing the first shot in the election campaign when you think about it. and I don't know how realistic what they were proposing is or was. And is it giving the government parties a chance to nitpick through it and pick out all the little holes in it?
From a Sinn Féin point of view and looking at it from a PR point of view, it's anything but talking about the two issues that they have.
Yeah.
And it got them on the news for another story other than what they were doing. And I would say that it really didn't matter what was between the pages of that book. If it was Peter Loves Jane, I'd say they would have released it and it would have got them a positive news story, which is what it got them.
As long as it wasn't Peter texting Jane, I don't think they'd care. Or Peter texting Peter. Something like that. Okay, so interesting times ahead. Look, it's in full. You've had canvassers to your door, I think, haven't you?
Well, I met one or two of them out and about, and I've been at a couple of funerals as well.
All right, sure, the funerals. No, anyone that dies between now and the 29th will have a huge funeral. There's no question about that, because they will be shaking hands, and anyone going to a match will be bombarded with stuff as well, I'm sure, as we go along. It'll be interesting to get the take of maybe some of those involved. We might do that in the next couple of weeks, George, and see how we go from there in terms of the election. But let me ask you, 18 of the 36 Fine Gael...
35, yeah.
Yeah, 35, is it? 18 of the 35 Fine Gael sitting TDs are not running. So, does that give them a disadvantage, or is it maybe an opportunity to bring in some new blood to the Dáil?
On one level, you'd say it's an opportunity to bring in new blood. The other side of it is, I suppose, that because they're in such a positive position at the moment, maybe this is the right election to bring them in. If they were trying to bring in those, in another election when they would be in a weaker position, they might be more inclined to lose an awful lot of TDs. But look, they may be missing out on the opportunity to capitalise fully on this Harris hop, as they call it, at the moment. And but look, you would expect Fine Gael to return 35, maybe heading towards 40 in the next election. If the weather is good with them, they could get over 40,
Right, okay.
But the whole arithmetic, of course, of the Dáil has changed this time around as well, because I think there's 14 new TDs, TDs coming in. So that brings it up to, 180. So 90 is the magic figure. In terms of getting a majority, 1991 is the magic figure next time round.
So Fine Gael has 40 and Fianna Fáil had 40. They're still 10 shy or 11 shy.
Yeah, but they're saying that in fair weather, and if the transfers go between Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael, they could just about make up that 90, is what they're saying, especially with the gene pool of independents that would support them, that are kind of...
You'd have the Michael Lowrys of this world and that, yeah. Okay, fair enough. All right, let's leave that there for the moment, but let's not leave the elections, because in fairness, one that has been talked about across Ireland and across the world indeed is the American presidential election of next week, and you were talking there about the Harris hop. I think the Harris hop of a few months ago across the water seems to have dissipated, or is that a master stroke from a PR perspective to bring out the undecideds? Because right now, if you were a betting man, you'd be putting your €1.50 each way on Trump, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I was just looking at CNN last evening, and they were, looking at the polls and that, and it's funny, there was 47-45, I think, in Nevada, and 45-47 in Arizona.
Okay, two swing states.
It is just too close to call at this point in the States. You spoke earlier on about people being weary in Ireland about this. God, the Americans know how to draw this stuff out.
They do, yeah, they do.
I mean, they won't get to the midpoint and the congressional elections at the 2-year point when they're already looking at what's happening for the presidential ones. It's just a continuous cycle in America. But yeah, look, this is going to be a very interesting election on any number of fronts, Ger. I don't think America has ever been as polarized as it is at the moment, in terms of the candidates, and in terms of, I mean, the Democrats are trying to paint Trump as being a fascist, ultra right wing. The others are trying to paint Harris as being ultra left wing. Where the truth is, who knows, is somewhere in the middle, I would say. At the end of the day, and I always remember that after the first time that Trump was elected, and there was a general wringing of the hands, that there was the great Neil O'Dowd, who of course was a great Irish commentator in America, was on the radio that morning, and people were asking him, is this woe is me? Is the world coming to an end because Donald Trump has been elected president? And he made a very good point. He said the founding fathers predicted just such a thing, and the reason that a good president gets very little done in his or her term of office is the same reason that a poor president gets very little done in his or her term of office. That, that the weights and balances are put in place in the American system. And, generally, if you get the presidency, you don't get the Senate. And it's very rarely that those two stars align that allow some very, very, very important things to go through. America is on a knife edge there. There's an awful lot of very serious issues going on, not least what's happening in the Middle East, and of course also then what's happening in Ukraine, and then they have their own domestic issues going on around reproductive rights and all of those sort of things. It's going to be a very, very, very interesting election. I do have, it's not for me to say I have an issue, but I suppose I do think it's a little strange that in a country of 160 million people, that 70,000 people in Eire County, can decide who gets into the White House. I just think it's a mad system that they have put in place there. But
it is, and if you look at the electoral colleges as well, it doesn't give a fair representation of the electorate. Sure, it doesn't. And you'd wonder if you were an American saying, well, what does my, somewhere in New York, what does my ballot count for? What does my X on the sheet of paper count for? Really, when it's others are making the decisions ultimately.
Yeah, but then you look at the likes of Georgia, I suppose, which traditionally was a Republican, and swung Democrat the last time around. But maybe they need to look at the whole college system at the moment in terms of the votes, and maybe make them more proportional to the number of people that are living in the States or whatever. But look, that's not my call, but it just seems to be a very, very strange system, the way it works. But look, ultimately, by the end of next week, we're going to know who's in the White House.
Well,
or not.
I heard a news report recently that there's something like 164 lawsuits already filed before, I was going to say before a ballot has been cast, but a lot of ballots have been cast already. But before polling day, 164 lawsuits, and Georgia, I think, has the vast majority of those as well. So I wonder when we'll actually know who the next president of the United States will be. It could be after Christmas.
Look, generally speaking, I think whoever is declared on the night will win through in the end. There's no precedent to suggest anything.
If it's that close, they're both going to take the win on the night. Then we're going to have some good fun. All righty, let's move on to sport of a different kind, George. Manchester United, we know, lost their manager, and there's been a lot of talk about that, but that's nothing to do with with Irish, really, except for the fact that there's so many Irish living in Manchester and that. But closer to home, Munster lose their head coach as well. So two iconic teams, I suppose you could say, or one-time iconic teams. What are people in Limerick particularly, because Limerick would be seen as the home of rugby, and it certainly is the home of Munster rugby. What are people in Limerick talking about in terms of that?
Yeah, look, I think there's been a deep intake of breath over the last couple of weeks, but I think yesterday it kind of came to an inevitable head. I suppose, and you can draw comparisons here between Manchester United and Munster rugby. Generally speaking, you don't lose managers midterm or mid-season in rugby. And I know a lot of people kind of expressed that yesterday. They said, wow, he's gone because he lost a few matches. That tends not to happen in rugby as much as it does in soccer. You could see poor old Ten Hag was hanging on by his fingernails for the last whatever length of time in Manchester United. But Graham Rowntree, and I mean, he had served an apprenticeship before he got the top job in Munster. He seemed to have been fairly well accepted. But you have to also ask, I suppose, when you look at Munster rugby, you also have to look at it now in terms of what is, what was he dealing with? Do we have the pool of talent? Certainly, and I know I've been talking to people about this, that when you look back at the glory days and you had Raj and Paul O'Connell and Peter Stringer and John Hayes and, you had Beer Classy back to the days and you had Quinny and you had, all those names which are so iconic in Munster rugby. And you look at it now and you say, really, how many of the current team would have even got on the subs bench on those days? Munster team? Yeah. So, like soccer in some respects, big money has come into rugby in the last while. Munster have always kind of been the team that survived on giant killing, that we were the ones in the corner, and it was always, Samson and whatever the other fellow was.
Delilah.
No, that wasn't Samson and Delilah.
I'm thinking of Tom Jones, am I? Samson and Goliath.
Anyway, let's get out of that metaphor as quickly as we possibly can. But yeah, look, Munster were always kind of the giant killers, and of course this weekend as well we have Munster and the All Blacks coming up in Thorne Park, which is a remake, I suppose, of the great 1978 game, which was the first rugby match, by the way, that I was ever at.
You're one of the 5 million that was there. You are.
I was there. It was the first rugby match my poor late dad ever brought me to, and I thought this was who are the All Blacks, Dad? So yeah, it certainly evokes, I suppose, memories for me. So look, Graham Rowntree, I don't know that he ever kind of captured the hearts of Munster people in the same way that other coaches did as well. But, Munster probably need to have a look at root and branch. Was Graham Rowntree getting the best out of the dressing room? Maybe not. Who's coming in is I think far more important now. Felix Jones, who would have been a crowd pleaser in Munster, is being very heavily tipped for the job, even though he's contract bound a little bit. But he would probably have to be bought out of a contract with the English Rugby Union. But there's probably a bit of money in the bank there. My other rugby correspondent tells me that the R.G. Snyman salary, which was being paid to him, may be enough to buy that particular one out. Okay. So I would say, if you're a betting man, I'd be putting money on maybe Felix Jones coming in and doing the job. Raj certainly isn't anywhere near it because he wants to win. He wants to win a French title with La Rochelle. And in fairness, who would want to move from La Rochelle to Limerick in the middle of the winter?
Oh, you're so pessimistic, George. And you a Limerick man. It's only a Limerick man who would get away with saying something like that. We'll keep our eyes peeled. What?
Have you been to La Rochelle?
I don't know. Have I been? I can't recall. I was in France for quite some time. But anyway, I don't know that I ever visited there, but there you are. It mustn't be that spectacular if I did. It's always great, George, to have a politician that you can roll out. When you're working on the media, sometimes we're a little bit lazy and, something comes up and we say, well, you know what? We can use him or we can use her for that because they always give us that and they always give us this. And Michael Healy-Rae from County Kerry is one of those politicians that gets rolled out regularly, and he's fabulous entertainment. And sometimes he talks the truth, and he talks like an ordinary Joe Soap like yourself and myself would talk, and he doesn't colour his words. But what I didn't expect was to be talking about Michael Healy-Rae and Taylor Swift in the same context. Deep fake videos and things like that are very commonplace now, and have been for a while, not just because AI is so big now. But I want listeners to take a listen to this, and then we'll have a chat about it.
Hey, it's Taylor Swift. You all know who I want to vote for in the American election. But if I was voting in Ireland, it would be only one man. That's Michael Healy-Rae. You know what? The Tay-Tay loves the Healy-Rae. That's right. Best of luck, Michael.
Tata. And Michael Healy-Rae. Did you ever think we'd have the two words in the same sentence?
Well, it's not widely known, but her people did come from Durham, Kilgarvan originally.
You're sounding like a Scrap Saturday sketch now.
That's great, isn't it? I think even Taylor Swift would enjoy that one. And the difference between deepfake being used in the Irish electoral context and the American one is that he did openly admit that this was a deepfake.
Oh, he did, yeah. Yeah, and he said he didn't see any harm, like it wasn't hurting anybody. But it was, in fairness, like I heard somebody on the radio yesterday after, this, or no, it was television last night, and they were kind of saying, yeah, well, look, that's all fine, but, it's not very good, and it's from the bottom end of this technology, and so basically they were slating it as being, so whoever put it together for Michael will be furious, I would imagine. But he did say, look, it's not hurting anybody, and sure, it is a bit of fun, and that's all it is. But it got him on the news, didn't it? Coming up to an election.
This is it, Ger. There's no such thing as bad publicity. And did we mention that there's an election coming up shortly? And that's what this is all about at the end of the day. It's about getting your name up there into the media and trying to portray it in the most positive possible light. So like... These guys are experts at it. Now, that said, does a Healy-Rae actually need to put themselves out there before an election? Because I think all they have to do is put their name on the ballot paper at this stage and Kerry, and they'll probably get elected.
They will, but I suppose, not only are the lads sitting on a stool last night in Kilgarvan and other parts of Kerry laughing about Michael and how, what a great character he is, but here we are talking on the Spanish radio station about Michael Healy-Rae. I wonder, is he going to run for Europe? Wouldn't that be fun?
Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah, with this
that's 5 years away, so it's all the 1 or 4 years.
Far more strange things have happened, and far stranger people sent to Europe already.
But what would they do with the translations on the telly when he was talking? There's no way.
They wouldn't have to change the translator anyway, because sometimes RTE nearly put out
subtitles.
Subtitles anyway.
All right, listen, Michael Healy-Rae giving us all a giggle, and why not? Halloween tomorrow night, George. Are you scared?
Absolutely, Ger. It's a strange time of the year. I've always found it strange, and I suppose it's one of the gifts that Ireland gave to the world, really, isn't it? The whole concept of Halloween. And the Americans particularly took it to themselves. I can remember as a kid, Ger, we would carve a turnip, by the way. There was no such thing as pumpkins in those days in Ireland. But I can remember carving out the turnip and, going around. And generally it was pouring rain, and, you were put into the black bin bag. And
that's right, yes.
Sent out with the candle inside the turnip. How we didn't set ourselves on fire more often, but anyway, but I can also remember getting books from America and reveling in this concept that they had in America. It was such a big thing in America when we were kids, and you kind of said to yourself, wow, this thing is so much bigger in America, and it's so much better, and it's so much everything. And it didn't take very long, once we had our own kids, and I suppose globalization came in, and, now we're, if you gave a child a pumpkin or gave a child a turnip and told them to carve it, they'd look at you.
They would.
Say, where's the pumpkin, But I mean, I didn't see a pumpkin, I'd say, till I was 40,
I am probably the same as you, yeah.
We have globalized and we have changed and we have done all of those things. But look, it's a lovely time of the year. And I suppose if we go back to the origins of it, the origins are a memory of remembering those that have gone before us, I suppose. And it's all linked into the whole thing of, November being the month of the Holy Souls, and All Saints and All Souls Day coming up at the very start, and the religious connotations of that. But even if you take the religious connotations out of it, isn't it lovely to think that there's a time of the year when we do kind of formally remember people that have gone before us, and we intone them and that. So Halloween, All Hallows, of course, being All Saints Day on the 1st of November. Halloween comes then from All Hallows Eve, All Hallows Evening. So that's where the word Halloween comes from. And, it is a very, very much an Irish thing that has gone out to the world. And I suppose it's something we should be very proud of as well.
And the way I live a rock and roll lifestyle, last night I was watching the Great British Bake Off, and there was Samhain even got a mention. One of the cakes was based on Samhain, and I thought it was lovely that there's the Irish word.
And of course that's all pre-Christian as well.
Yeah, it is.
Goes back to our Celtic traditions and that as well. So it is a time of the year, I suppose, when the weather is changing, when we're going from being autumn into winter. The leaves are all falling, as I know at home at the moment.
Same as here.
But it's a strange time of the year, and I suppose it is a time of the year when we all get seasonally affected disorder because the light is gone. I mean, our clocks changed last weekend. I hate that particular change, and you're trying to hang on to the last little bit of light and convincing yourself that the summer isn't over, and then suddenly the clock changes. But
you know what?
5 this morning.
I only remarked on it to myself last night at about 5:30 when I closed all the curtains, and the fire was already on since about 4:00, and I was able to sit there in front of the fire and watch the news. It was great, and I knew I couldn't be out cutting the grass or clipping the hedge or anything like that. I was safe.
And then you said we have to do this G2 thing. Where is he?
No, that's tonight. Right, listen, I think we'll leave it there. George, I hope you have a lovely Halloween, and next week I suppose we'll start talking about Christmas, and we'll have the
we have a lot of things to talk about next week, George.
We probably will. Actually, you probably might be back to me next week, because we might try and organise Ben as well, and we might do something on the election if there's been movement.
Yeah.
So it'd be nice to organise that. So look, in the meantime, thanks a million for joining us, and have yourself a pleasant evening.
God bless.
Stars in our eyes, never dreaming it could come to this. One by one the stars went out, now it's all a mess. What can you do when love peters out? Spend your days on eggshells, watching your eyes, for your life. to save our love, even if we could. So hard to let go of something once good between you and me. What's the good? It's gone for good, away from you and me. So let's hold on to another kind of love for you and
me. Magic stuff. Magic. That is Green Shine and a song that's called The Good Is Gone. What did I do with that there now? Have I that up there? Am I alright? I am. I was moving something just before that. On the computer now. Not physical. Oh God, no, not physical labour or anything like that. Thank you to George. That was recorded a couple of hours ago. Ahead because George wasn't available this evening, but it was important to get the chat and find out what's happening. So there we go, Green Shine and The Good Is Gone. Now, let me see. I told you that we're very much with the people of Spain in Ireland at the moment, and that is the top story. Looking at the RTE website, the Department of Foreign Affairs has said that it is monitoring the situation in Spain and stands ready to provide consular assistance. Many Irish citizens have found themselves caught up in the flooding and have shared their experiences with RTE News. That's available on the RTE News site if you're interested in that. But just also need to tell you that if you happen to be Irish and if you're in bother in Spain, the Irish Embassy in Madrid, the telephone number is +34, obviously, if you're dialing from an Irish number. So it's +34 914 364 093. All right, that's +34 914 364 093. And so there we have it. All right. What else have I got for you? Well, I have other bits of news. Plenty, lashons of news is what I have. A new hourly rail service linking Dublin and Belfast commenced yesterday. It's being funded from a €25 million investment by the government's Shared Ireland Fund and the Department of Transport. It's the biggest expansion of the route in more than 25 years. And there will now be 15 services in each direction between Dublin and Belfast from Monday to Saturday. Until now, there had only been 8 daily services each way. On Sundays, there will be 8 services each way, up from 6 previously. Minister for Transport Eamon Ryan said an hourly rail service on the Dublin-Belfast rail corridor had been a priority for both jurisdictions on the island. This will help people along the line to choose the train more often and will strengthen both economic and social connections right along the corridor, he said. Stormont's Infrastructure Minister John O'Dowd said it offered the opportunity to grow jobs and improve access to education. It would also help decarbonise transport and encourage behavioural shifts to public transport, he added. All trains will serve Dublin. That's Dublin Connolly, that is. Drogheda, Dundalk, Newry, Portadown and Belfast Grand Central. There are plans for more investment in new trains for the route by the end of the decade, which is absolutely brilliant. So good luck and safe journey to all who travel on that. The Department of Transport has hinted at a shake-up of electric vehicle grants following criticism from the head of the Climate Change Advisory Council. Marie Donnelly, don't know how you pronounce that correctly, said that EV purchase grants were going mainly to high-income earners who did not need financial assistance to buy a new car. She said that they often did not even need a car because they were driving relatively short distances and lived in areas with good public transport. The department has spent almost €300 million on EV purchase grants for 65,000 motorists since the scheme was introduced in 2011. But EV sales have slowed over the past 18 months. Addy, that's why they're interested in improving things. Ms Donnelly said further spending should focus on rural dwellers and other groups who drove the most but brought the fewest EVs. For retrofitting too, it's primarily rich people who've been doing it because they can afford it. The government has no joined-up policy. You need to target rural people and who don't have a busy bus service, but will have a roof for solar panels and a garden for in which to park the car. Almost every farmer, she said, has 2 cars. Don't know about that. And they need them. I understand that, she said. One should be specifically supported to be an EV and should be charged from solar panels. This is joined up thinking. I agree with that. The Department of Transport began a review of EV supports earlier this year, which included looking at grant schemes in other countries where incentives vary for different groups of people. In response to Ms Donnelly's remarks, the department said, "We continue to review our existing schemes as well as explore new opportunities. While we are unable to confirm details on future incentives at this stage, we're looking to support and encourage people to consider an electric vehicle, especially where public transport or active travel is not a viable option." Yeah, so there we go. That's interesting. All right, for sure. There's another very interesting case going on at the moment. And I want to get the report because I want to be able to report it accurately because it concerns a case that is live at the moment. And I spotted it a few minutes ago, but it seems to have gone away. Don't like it when that happens. It's not gone down there, is it? No. All right, let me see. It might be over here. There it is. A 73-year-old woman who falsely claimed her dead father-in-law's pension for over, wait for it, 28 years, has paid an additional €40,000 in compensation. Margaret Bergam, who is from County Laois, has pleaded guilty to 15 charges in relation to the offence. She was to be sentenced in Portlaoise Circuit Court today, but has had her sentencing put back until Friday. She had previously pleaded guilty to 10 sample counts of theft and 5 sample counts of larceny arising from fraudulently claiming John Bergen's state pension. The court heard that Ms Bergen had been drawing down his pension for 28 and a half years after his death to the value of €271,046.28. The money was collected between the 31st of December 1993 and the 25th of February 2022. In June, she paid €35,000 by way of compensation, but Judge Keenan Johnson said the figure was not enough and he adjourned the case to allow for a proper restitution to be raised. Today, Defence Counsel Damien Colgan told the court that his client had provided an additional $40,000. He told the judge there just is no other money available. And he said that the best his defendant could do is pay €50 a week from her pension. Prosecution counsel Will Fennelly said that it meant that there was still an outstanding loss to the state of €196,046.28. A letter of apology was read out in the court from Ms Bergam, in which she said that she wanted to apologise sincerely for what she had done and say how sorry she was for committing the crime. She was the authorised agent to withdraw John Bergen's pension when he was still alive, and she had been his carer until his death. And in the letter read out by Mr. Colgan, she said that she made the huge mistake of carrying on collecting her father-in-law's pension after he died, but she said she felt trapped. She said she was ashamed and embarrassed by her actions, and she pleaded to the judge to show me as much mercy as you can. The court was also told that Bergen is now in poor health and she has become socially isolated and estranged from one of her children and her brother because of her actions. Mr. Colgan said that his client was remorseful and apologetic, and he said Bergen had let her family down and regrets her actions. It's a fascinating story, and it's one that has certainly been given a lot of column inches and a lot of airtime over the last wee while. I did say I'd try and get this one in. I hope I get it all in. I won't actually, but I get as much as I can. From the Kilfenora Cayley Band and Dunstiff.
In the sky, Willie Clancy played his pipes and the tears welled in my eyes. Many years have passed and gone since the times that we had there, but my heart's tonight in Ireland in the sweet County Clare. My heart's tonight is far away, it's across the rolling sea. In the sweet Milltown Malbay, it's there I'd love to be. So long ago, far away, and there's nothing can compare. My heart's tonight in Ireland, in the sweet County Clare. That August in Kilrush when the rain was lashing down, and our hotel was at Haybar, in the outskirts of town. We were all sick and feverish and Dolan had the flu, but Johnny produced some whiskey and the sun came smiling through. My heart's tonight is far away, it's across the rolling sea. In the sweet Milltown Malbay, it's there I'd love to be. So long ago and far away, and there's nothing can compare. My heart's tonight in Ireland, in the sweet County Clare. Those nights of 6 Mile Bridge when the songs and music flowed, and when it came to closing time the lights were turned down low, and the sergeant from Kilkishenny would buy us all one more, and we never left that pub before the clock was striking 4. My heart's tonight is far away, it's across the rolling sea. In the sweet Milltown Malbay, it's there I'd love to be. So long ago and far away, and there's nothing can compare. My heart's tonight in Ireland, in the sweet County Clare. The engine in its time in Lisconnor and Kilkee, but best of all was Milltown, the music flowed so free. But it Clancy and the County Clare forever in your debt, for the sights and sound of yesterday are shining memories yet. My heart's tonight is far away, it's across the rolling sea. In the sweet Milltown Malbay, it's there I'd love to be. So long ago and far away, there's nothing can compare. My heart's tonight in Ireland, in the sweet County Clare. Playing the jig of Jimmy Ward in the sweet County Clare.
That's wonderful stuff, and I hate to talk over the beautiful music from the Kilfenora Cayley Band. That was Don Stiff on vocals, a wonderful singer-songwriter from County Galway. That's my lot for today. Can I say a big thank you to James Lawless for talking to me about his new book, which is called Helios. That's now available on our virtual website, our virtual bookstore on our website at TRE.radio. Thanks to Julie again for that. George Lee, thank you for joining me. And as always, can I say a big thank you to Antonio Sierra, our Spanish-Irish cultural advisor on the programme. Please, if you're in Spain listening, stay safe. I hope that the weather will improve soon. And condolences to those who have lost loved ones. From me, Ger Sweeney, until next week for another Live on Eire. Bye-bye and thank you.
Ger Sweeney presents Live on Eire in association with emeraldconnection.net.
You've been listening to a TRE production. If you've enjoyed this programme, there'll be another episode waiting for you next week, right here on this platform, where you can also access our extensive back catalogue of shows and interviews. For more information on our live programming, social media channels and apps, and how to contact Talk Radio Europe, please visit TRE.radio.